Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss Anora, starring Mikey Madison, Mark Idleshine. I don't know if I said that wrong, please forgive me. Yura Borisov, Karen Karugian, something like that. Forgive me if I said that wrong. And Vash Tavmasian, directed by Sean Baker. Now, I didn't see this movie in theaters, so it's going to be my first two viewings of this movie in theaters. Well, not in theaters, but at home. But how do I feel about it? Let's get into the movie. We open with the stripper named Annie, played by Mikey Madison. And in case if you've forgotten, I reviewed her before in the 2022 film Scream and Quentin Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, as she's addicted to sex and takes off half her clothes and she gets half naked during sex scenes. And Mikey Madison does a pretty damn good job with her performance as she plays a stripper while she's chatting with her friend. The editing did feel a little choppy in that scene as she gets interrupted from her meal break and Annie meets Ivan, played by, and let me see if I'm saying this guy's name right, Mark Edelstein, something like that, who is Russian, as he also speaks a little English, but he wanted a girl who speaks Russian, in which Annie does, as she serves him and has sex with. And despite I've never been a stripper before, nor have I ever been to a place where they had those, Mikey Madison pulls off a tremendous performance, and director Sean Baker does a good job at filming the first half with the main character as a stripper, and the second half I'll get to later in the show. Annie gets a text from Ivan telling her to come over for sex purposes, and she gives him her number a few minutes ago in the movie, and she comes to Ivan's place, and they can have sex, and he has a nice view and have sexual intercourse with each other. And the actor playing Ivan is good, but in my opinion, not great. While he has a terrible laugh, despite I don't criticize people for their laugh, he has kind of a dumb laugh, in my opinion. As I'll find out some things I'll talk about later in the show, as I relate more with Annie than anyone else throughout the movie. While Diamond comments about how not fun Annie is, and Diamond is a jealous bitch, and Annie comes by strip dancing for Ivan, and this whole movie made me think he's taking so much fucking advantage of her to beg for sex so goddamn much, as that character comes off obnoxious. Ivan plays a video game while they have 45 minutes till their appointment is over and continues to hump her ass while the fucking video game goes. And we move on to Annie bringing her friend Lulu along, as this is a New Year's party. While Ivan's bodyguard Toros is there, and again, Ivan begs Annie for sex. And how many scenes of sex are there? It's gonna kind of it gets kind of boring sometimes, and I never get this bored with from sex too often, as unless there's too many of it in the movie. While Annie tries to leave, but Ivan brings up putting her exclusive to show his friends as he offers money to her, while Annie asks her for a week off to join Ivan in a Las Vegas trip and have some fun with her. And this first half hour kind of dragged for me. And this movie is a little too long at 2 hours and 19 minutes. And I think 10 minutes of this could have been in the editing room floor, in my opinion. Ivan and Annie go to a candy store while smoking dope as the boss comes in and says, "Don't smoke dope," while they still do and act all fucked up about it. And they go to Las Vegas and wait for their suite. And they get in there as soon as the maids finish cleaning the room up, and they have some fun with one another as well as their friends. And at one point, in the middle of a sex scene, Ivan asks Annie to marry him because he brings up marrying an American as he wants to be an American citizen. And I don't think he meant it based on what's going to happen for the rest of the movie, as they get married to at Little White Chapel as they celebrate their marriage. And I like the cinematography in that scene, as it's well shot in this movie, is well made, and I really like the story. Annie quits her job as a stripper because she got married to Ivan, and people say goodbye to her as Diamond's first words out of her fucking mouth is I'll give it a couple of weeks until they get divorced. And Annie tells her off, and she leaves for good while having a happy life with Ivan, which won't last very long, as Diamond brought up, which I don't know why I'm saying it like that, but anyways. Meanwhile, Ivan doesn't tell his parents nor Toros, as he's a priest of some kind, while he receives a word about Ivan's marriage, and he can't believe it. And the shots in this movie are great to look at, while Toro sends in a couple of guys in a car to check on Ivan, named Garnick and Igor, as they barge in the house and to ask him if he's married, while when they were speaking Russian. The subtitles went a little too fast for me. Like, I can't always read that quickly in a subtitled movie. Garnick demands on seeing their marriage license and takes a picture of the papers, while Igor chats briefly with Annie, as they'll build their relationship for the rest of the movie from there on, which is a good arc. Garnick and Igor call Toros for an emergency, while they stand by to hear what Toros says to him, while Toros leaves a baptism for the family emergency and calls Garnick so Ivan and Annie can hear him calling her a hooker and a whore, while she understands Russian and Ivan's parents are on the way to America, while Toros will be there in 10 minutes. And Ivan wants to leave the house as Annie wants to get dressed, and Ivan leaves her. And I'm thinking, what kind of husband is that? While Annie beats the shit out of, as well as bites Igor, and he puts her in a position where they have to tie her up, and she repeatedly keeps beating up Igor. And she eventually kicks Garnick in the face to give him a bloody nose, while Toros is still on the phone with them. And the plot is to this movie is kicking in where some fucked up shit happened, and I'm going to get the chills at this point. Toros comes in the house and sees what the fuck happened and talks with Garnick while Annie tries to get his attention, and there's so much shouting going on in the scene as they get her phone and they call Ivan, as he doesn't pick up when anybody calls him, while Toro says to Annie some fucking husband he is, as he ditches her and doesn't pick up his phone, while she doesn't know who the fuck Ivan is, as she's believing in a fantasy, while they're staying at his parents' house while they're in Russia, and they're going to get a divorce while they're going to kill Toros, and they try to take off the wedding ring and screams loudly too fucking much to the point they put a scarf in her to shut her the fuck up. And so far, this is a better half of this 2 hour and 19-minute movie, while Igor is being very nice to her, and she comes off slimy to him and in her situation. I relate with Annie at this point. Toros wants Annie to cooperate with and help him to find Ivan, and the screenplay is well written, in my opinion. And Annie says she wants to talk to Ivan, and Toros wants to give Annie a shitload of money, like 10K, for example. And she eventually cooperates with Toros, Igor, and Garnick and get in the car to find Ivan, while Igor tries to apologize to Annie, but she doesn't give a fuck about it, while going on to their first location, which is by the beach, and visit the candy shop, and asks Tom and Crystal to call Ivan as they pick up a baseball bat. And Igor grabs the bat and smashes things in the candy shop, which is the scariest scene in the movie, as this half is fucking scary for damn sure. As I like this half much better than the first half. They get to the workplace of Alex, or what the K spelled, works at, as they cause a scene and ask the DJ to stop the music for a second to ask if they've seen Ivan, and everybody says no. And they walk back to the car, and Igor offers the same scarf that he put in Annie's mouth earlier in the film, and she gets cold because it's cold there. And eventually she puts it on as Toros almost gets towed, and he aggressively gets his car out of the tow truck like a fucking maniac. And they continuously look at him, and these motherfuckers are crazy as fuck, like acting aggressive while Henrik vomits in the car. They they're trying to get the smell out of the car, which was hilarious because it was his fault for vomiting in the first place. And they go to one bar after another, and this movie is so far better than what I was expected, as I was surprised. Ivan goes to the place Annie worked at, as Diamond wants to fuck him while Annie, Toros, Henrik, and Igor are at a restaurant and eats while Annie asks for a pill, while Toros asks for the patrons if they've seen Ivan, and some douchebag says to not disturb them during their dinner, as they're being rude, and Annie gets a message from Lulu saying Diamond is trying to fuck Ivan at her workplace, and she does, and she holds them up until they arrive, and they're still in there, and they catch Ivan fucking Diamond. And Annie tries to talk with Ivan about the situation while he's drunk out of his fucking mind. And he doesn't want to, as they drag him out of there. And Annie briefly fights Diamond, and it causes a scene. And Igor picks up Annie, and she says she wants to talk to him sober. And Toro says, no more talking, and I'm worried about Annie, but not so much Ivan, because he's a terrible husband to begin with. They get to the courthouse and wait around and get inside with their lawyer, as Annie aggressively tells the judge at first the situation, while she calmly tells him they got married in Las Vegas, Nevada, and they get out of the courthouse and go to Las Vegas to get the divorce there, as she tries to talk with Ivan while he's pretty hungover, and go to the airport with Annie to talk with Ivan's parents, and they're not happy, and the mother comes off nasty to Annie right off the bat, as I hated the mother character, but the father character was fine, as he laughs at how fucked up this family is, as that's hilarious to me. They get on the plane to go to Las Vegas and to get Ivan and Annie divorced, which is fucked up in so many ways. Like, he was a lousy motherfucking husband while Igor relates with her. And Annie reluctantly goes on the plane, and while on it, she tells Ivan in front of his parents how pathetic Ivan is, while Henrik is drunk too. And I thought, oh my god, really with this bullshit? As Igor gives Annie a drink, and she drinks it, and they get to Vegas and sign Annie and Ivan's divorce papers, as she stares at Ivan and says her last words to Ivan like he's a pussy. And the family is fucked up, while the father laughing at Ivan after Igor tells the family to apologize to Annie, and Igor flies back to their home and takes her back to the house while making her comfortable and respect her as the person she is, as he confesses his birthday was today, while she acts disrespectful to him. And she moves back home the next day, and Igor finds her attractive to a point he gives her the wedding ring, and they fuck as she cries, and the movie ends here. And the climax surprised me on how much I liked the movie better than I thought I was going to. And how much did I like it? Let's get to the ratings, shall we? I'll give this movie a 7.4 out of 10. I get how this movie is well done, acted, and made, and director Sean Baker does a good job at telling a story of a stripper going through hell with someone she meets and suddenly marries, and goes through rough patches, as Mikey Madison gives one of her best performances in her role as the stripper. But this is kind of a long movie at 2 hours and 19 minutes, and 10 minutes of it could have been in the editing room floor. I like the cinematography in this movie, is great to look at, as are the shots, but I noticed the editing was choppy at least a couple of times throughout, as the screenplay is well written, and the second half works better than the first half, in my opinion, as that's the scariest part of the fucking movie. At first, I had no interest in this movie, but I was surprised on how much I liked this movie better after the second viewing for this review. And it was thrilling, and I'm giving this a recommendation to check this out. If you like it, great. If not, no big deal, as it's not for everyone. But it probably won't win any Oscars, sadly. But I like the movie. Don't get me wrong, I really do. But I just don't think it'll win Oscars at this point. Sorry, I'd like to thank you guys for joining me, and next time I will be back with Conclave. And until then, and the Oscar goes to.